Yes, welcome to my class. This is lecture 2, and I'm Chibet Mary Jane, and we are going to learn about classification of consonant sounds. So, how do we classify the consonant sounds? So, the place of articulation of human sounds is classified according to the distribution of speech organs along the vocal tract. So, this distribution gives us the major articulations and the places of articulations. So, the objectives of this lesson, like by the end of this lesson, you have to describe all the consonant sounds according to the place of articulation and according to the manner of articulation. So we have the production of sounds. They're classified into the place and the manner of articulation. So we have the place of articulation. Let's start with the place of articulation. So the place of articulation, the production of sounds can be classified into place and the manner. So the major articulations are divided into three. We have the oral articulations, pharyngeal, laryngeal articulations, and the nasal articulations. So let's start with the oral articulations. There are articulations that takes place in the oral cavity. For example, the labial. So the labial, they use the lower lip and the active articulator. So they are further divided into bilabials and the labiodentals. Bilabials, they are produced when the lip comes together, like b, yes, and Then labiodentals, they are produced when the lower lip and the upper teeth come together. For example, f, v, in words like photo and van. Then we have number 2, we have the dental-alveolar articulation. So they use the tip and the blade of the tongue as the active articulators, and they are divided into dentals, alveolar sounds, and the post-alveolar sounds. So the dentals are sounds that are formed with the tip of the tongue, which comes tip of the tongue, which will be either behind the upper front teeth or between the teeth. So the examples of the examples of dentals is in the words like pink, there, and then. So let's go to the alveolar sounds. So alveolar sounds are sounds that the sounds formed with the front part of the tongue on the alveolar ridge. So the alveolar ridge is the rough bony ridge immediately behind the upper teeth. So the sounds produced are like t, d, z, z. We have s and n. So other sounds are like that are found at the beginning of the word, like lap. Okay, yes. Then we have the post-alveolar sounds. So these are points. These are 2 points of contact in articulation of these sounds. So the tip of the tongue is raised close to the alveolar ridge, while the front part of the tongue is curved towards the roof of the mouth. So we have for example, the words like jog, and jump, or chair, or shut, show, share, and pleasure, leisure. So those are the post-alveolar sounds. So we have the retroflex palatal sounds. So these sounds are produced with the sublaminar part of the tongue. For example, they're divided into 2 sounds: retroflex sounds and palatal sounds. So retroflex sounds, that sounds that are produced when the tip of the tongue is curled back towards the hard palate. For example, these words right here, z, n, d, yes, these ones right here. For example, these words right here. So we have the palatal sounds. Palatal sounds, they are sounds that are produced when the front of the tongue is raised towards the hard palate. For examples in words like yet, yell, or in Kiswahili words like nyama or nyani. Okay. Then we have the next one. We have the ovular sounds. So they're articulated with the back of the back part of the tongue. So for example, we have g and k. So those are velar sounds. So the velar sounds are produced by raising the back of the tongue to the soft palate. That is the velum. Then we have so the velum can also be lowered to allow airflow through the nasal cavity and produce another velar sound, like sang or bang. So we have also the uvular sounds. They are mainly found in other languages. For instance, among the Somali, the g, and r. Yes, so that's it. Then we have the pharyngeal laryngeal articulation. So these sounds are the sounds of pharyngeal laryngeal articulations. You can remember the diagram that I showed you. So the sounds include these sounds include these. You have the h sounds, and then the laryngeal sounds Like for example, in the word like house or heart, ha, the heart, house or heart. So we have the nasal articulation. Let's go to the nasal articulation. The nasal cavity has no points of articulation. Nasal articulators have their points of articulation in the oral cavity. So the oral cavity. So there are 7 human nasal sounds. We have and So all those sounds, you make sure that you pronounce them and you know how to pronounce them. So you're done with the place of articulation. Let's go to the manner of articulation. So manner of articulation is it's a distinction that is made between vowels and consonants in relation to the manner of articulation. So the manner of articulation includes the manner of articulation ask in the it asks air flowing in the mouth or is there an interruption. So whether there is an interruption or where there is air flowing through the mouth. So we have the examples. It include one, we have the plosives. So the plosives, they occur when the articulating organs come into very close contact that stops the air of flowing. So for example, we have the oral plosives and the nasal stops. Oral plosives, you have p, like b, d, t, g. So make sure you pronounce those words. So we have the fricatives. So the fricatives, the results when organs come close together in such a way that the air escapes through organs, causing frictions that is audible. For example, then we have the third one. We have the laterals. So the laterals, it involves partial closure in the mouth. So the laterals make use of close approximation. The airstream is blocked by the tip of the tongue, but allows the escape alongside the tongue. For example, so laterals has only one example, that is then we have the approximants. Approximants are it is produced with the organs articulatory organs wide apart. Air therefore flows out without any friction. For example, G. So approximants also has one example, that is G. So we have the trill. We have the trill. So the trill is calculated or it is articulated with structure types, an alternation between complete structure and open approximation. So you repeatedly use these structures. Like for a good example is R. Trill has a good example of R. Then we have the affricates. So we had the fricatives, but right now we have the affricates. So we have the affricates. So initially there is a complete closure as for plosive, then it is followed by a slow release within or a slow release with friction for fricative. So for example, G or G, like jug. An example in a sentence is jug. Then we have flap. Flap is formed with a very brief complete closure. For example, in the letters L and N in water, when you say water or metal. Okay, so that only is an example of flap. So that is the end of our lesson. So I will make sure that you go and research more on the places and manner of articulation, and you make sure that you do the discussion forum on the classification of consonant sounds. Thank you.